I hope this challenge didn't give you too big a headache. The way I solved it was with 3 loops. The first loop handled only the first row of table headers. And we need to begin by creating a PHP block between the table tags on line 11. So let's have PHP in there. And then so we know what we're doing, let's comment the code. So create first row of table headers. And we need to start the table row and create an empty table header for the first cell. So we'll use echo, then our opening table row tag, then on the next line echo, and we'll have a table header tag, and inside that a non-breaking space and a closing table header tag. Next we need to create a loop to populate the rest of the row with 12 table header cells, each with the number from 1 to 12. I used a for loop and I wondered what to use as the counter. Should I use I or J? And I decided in the end that to make the code easier to understand, I would use col, standing for column, as my counter. So for, and then I initialize col at 1. Then we need the condition, which will be col is less than or equal to 12. And then we need to increment col at the end of each iteration of the loop. And to make the code easier to read, rather than using curly braces, I use the alternative syntax, so a colon at the end of that line. Then inside there, we need to echo inside a double quoted string a table header and the value of col, and a closing table header. And then we end that with end for and a semicolon. And when we get to the end of the row, we need a closing tr tag. So echo and then the closing tr tag. So that part is fairly straightforward. It's a simple loop that creates all the table headers in a single row. Next we need a loop for the remaining rows. So let's start with another comment. So create remaining rows. And this will also be a for loop. The first expression inside the parentheses will initialize 2 counters, not just 1. So for, and we'll have row equals 1, and then a comma, and col equals 1. Then our semicolon, and the loop needs to run until we've created 12 rows. So it'll be row less than or equal to 12, and we need to increment the row after each iteration. So row plus plus. And again, I'm going to use the alternative syntax. Then inside that for loop, we need to begin the table row. So echo, then we have our tr tag, the opening tr tag. And the first cell is a table header. So we need a conditional statement to check if col is 1. If it is, we create a table header with the row number in it. So let's have another comment to explain what's going on. First cell is a table header. So if col is equal to 1, then we'll use the curly brace syntax here. Echo, then in double quoted string, our opening th tag, our row counter, closing tht tag. Then after that conditional statement, we need to create another loop to display the remaining cells in the row, and each cell needs to display the result of multiplying the row number by the column number. This time I'm going to use a while loop. So while col is less than or equal to 12, and then we'll have the colon after that, Then inside there, we'll echo, we need an opening TD tag. Then we concatenate to that row times column, and this is what creates the number which is displayed in the table cell. And we need to increment col each time, then the closing table cell tag, TD tag, and then we finish that off with end while. Now we're using the increment operator here, and we're multiplying. Remember that putting the plus plus after the variable performs the calculation first. So the first time the loop runs, col is 1. It's not incremented to 2 until after the calculation. And after the end while, we need to close the table row. So echo, then the closing table row tag. And we also need to reset the value of our col counter at the end of each row. So let's have another comment. So col equals 1. And there's just one last piece of code that we need, and that is to close the for loop that builds the last 12 rows of the table. So end for and a semicolon. And that, believe it or not, is all the code that we need. So if we save that and then load this page into the browser, there is the multiplication table. Even if you weren't able to come up with a solution to this challenge, I hope you found it useful to see how I broke the task down into smaller pieces. Let's just go back to the code. First, we had a single loop that created the first row of table headers. Then we had a second loop, this for loop, to create the remaining rows, and nested inside that second loop was another loop, a while loop, that created the cells for the current row. This solution brings together in just over 20 lines of code several important features of PHP: loops for repetitive tasks, conditional statements to execute different code, basic arithmetic, and outputting HTML. Although this produces a multiplication table, you'll find the same techniques being used all the time when generating dynamic web pages with PHP.